If you're facing a crossroads in your business right now and you're not sure whether to keep on going, to cut your losses, or where to turn, then this is a podcast that you want to definitely tune into. I am chatting today with Brandon Byrne, the founder of childrenswear brand Lil and Izzy, which she closed in April last year. And Katie has been a guest on the podcast a few years ago when she first started the brand and built a fantastic business, but then things changed. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Nicole. I'm delighted to come on and eventually get over all the emotion of closing the business and be able to actually talk about it.
We reached out to each other, I think, when you were going through it, because it is a very emotional, your business is your baby. You put so much blood, sweat, and tears into it. But for those people that don't know you, don't know the brand, can you just give a little background to the business, when it was started and how the journey went? And we'll talk about how you came to the decision to close it.
So I started Lil and Izzy when I was on maternity leave when I had my daughter Isabel, who is now 6. I started when she was literally 6 months old. And I decided then that I wasn't going to go back to work a global buyer for a big retailer that we both work for, and that I was going to channel all my energy into starting my own business and starting my own brand. And it all came about because she had really bad eczema and allergies, and I just wanted to find clothes that weren't going to itch her skin, especially baby grows at night time. She'd scratch herself till she was bleeding. And I developed a baby clothing range and a car seat blanket that just helped your baby sleep better, feel better. Everything was made from organic cotton. I used, YKK zips, all lead, nickel free. And the design was that it had fold over feet, fold over hands. And it was something that wasn't on the market in Ireland at the time. And I then branched into sleeping bags, which won awards. Our car seat blankets won awards, and the baby girls also won awards. And just it grew from a small online business into expanding into wholesale. So we were stocked in the likes of Avoca stores nationwide, in Arnott's department stores, in little boutiques all around the country. And the plan was to really ramp it up and export. The next market then was the UK that I was looking at. And then Brexit happened and the pandemic happened. And fast forward then, we're into year 6 and now the business is in liquidation. So it had so many highs, and then now it had the lowest low, and it just, I'm at the point now personally where I can actually speak about it, because last year when I was closing and everything, it was so emotional. I actually couldn't even talk about it. And it was a really, really hard pill to swallow, to put an end to something that I put so much of my heart and soul in. And my brand was named after my children, Lily and Isabel, Lil and Izzy. So it just, it hurt. It hurt in there.
I can imagine. When did you start thinking, I'm not sure if we can continue with this?
So it was the pandemic actually soared my business, to be honest, because everybody went online looking for products to buy, and people were having babies and they couldn't get to the shops and they couldn't buy products, and people were in the moment of actually buying into luxury because they wanted that nicer thing to make them feel better. So the pandemic was actually a good thing for me launching online. I mean, we were only trading 6 months when the pandemic hit. And I thought, God, here's the end of my business with all of this stock. But we actually sold out of all of the stock, and I was trying to get more in, and then factories were closed, and it was crazy, So the business really soared online. And then when we came out of the pandemic, prices just went insane. The price of cotton went mental, and the shipping, the logistics just tripled, quadrupled. The container prices were insane. Now, I wasn't at the point where I was filling containers at that point, but there was, then you don't actually have any wiggle room to negotiate with the supplier when you're such a small fish. So pricing to air the goods in was gone through the roof. So my cost, as much as I was doubling and tripling my quantities with my supplier, the prices weren't going down as they should have been, which we had planned for previously. The prices were still going up and up and up. So we thought we could manage it, and we thought things would stabilize, and we plowed more of our own cash into the business to kind of keep things going. And because we really believed in it, like I believed in it so much, my husband believed in it, he believed in me, and the brand was doing so well in terms of the feedback from customers. Like, you know, Vogue Williams had it on her kids, Rosanna Davidson, like, you know, it was just being so loved. And
Yeah, it was a very loved
you know,
brand, wasn't it? It received lots of like the awards, the press, the exposure.
yeah,
You
like
had a strong, engaged social following.
yeah, really, really engaged. And then, you know, you're always hopeful that things will turn around and that cost prices will come down. And you're always thinking, you know, look, in 6 months' time, if we can ride this through, in 6 months' time, we'll be grand, because we're after getting a, you know, we're wholesaling now and our quantities are going up, and then we're planning to export. And I actually outgrew my attic space where I was doing all of the orders and everything. And I needed to take on some staff because I couldn't cope with doing all the orders on my own. So we took on a unit. Initially, it was just pick and pack, and I took on staff and had two girls in there packing orders. And I was really working on the business then. I wasn't solely like in
Mhm.
it, you know, 24/7.
Yeah.
And like, everything was going really, really well. Now, of course, we took out a bank loan to allow us to expand for that. And
Can you share from the like from a the size of a loan that you?
like, I mean, the loan was 30 grand, you know, so chunky enough. And we also, you know, believed in the brand, that, you know, we were well able to pay this back. And we'd also put in some of our own cash into the business as well, that, you know, we're never going to get back. So that's a hard pill to swallow when you put in your savings into something. But again, I believed in the brand. My husband believed in the brand. Everyone believed in the brand. Like, you know, we were like, this is business. There's ups and downs. And then you'd have amazing weeks and record months. And you were like, yeah, this is going really, really well.
What would be like a very good month for you?
Like 25 grand.
So then what changed? When was your like, oh shit, or you know, this is we're in danger here. What's happening?
So I noticed that sales were slowing down. A couple of things actually happened. So number one, two competitors come into the Irish market that completely undercut me. Now they weren't
Right.
like for like products in general in terms of the quality and the workmanship and everything else that I was doing with my brand. So down to our packaging, it was all biodegradable. You know, I worked with the rainforest or the reforest nation on sustainability, where, you know, for offsetting our carbon footprint and replanting of trees. And you know, I was trying to do everything the right way. And unfortunately, when you do everything the right way, eco-friendly, like one sheet of your branded wrapping paper could be 15 cents. Whereas if you buy
Yeah.
all the, you know, other stuff that's not biodegradable, it might be 1 cent. So like that racks up when you're doing, you know, hundreds and thousands of orders, you know, like that money racks up. So even down to a branded sticker that's biodegradable, it's 5 times more expensive than a normal plastic sticker, you know? So we were looking at our costs, and like everything just kept going up. And then our rent and our rates in year two went up on the unit. And then obviously I was paying staff, and then I was paying PRSI, and then you're paying sick leave. And it was just
Mm.
all the costs were just snowballing. And not that it was out of control. We were trying to control it and contain it in the best way possible. But what was going out and what was coming in wasn't balancing out in terms of then buying more stock and injecting more money into the business then for marketing. And then the other thing that happened was Instagram stopped the tap to shop function in Ireland. And once that stopped, I mean, that's one click. You don't want to make things awkward or difficult for your customer to buy online. They want one click. They don't want to get their credit card. They want to just do Apple Pay. They want to see
Yeah.
something on Instagram, tap it, and buy it within 10 seconds. So once you took the tap to shop away, they then had to go onto your website, then go find the product that they wanted to buy, then make the purchase. So straight away, you've lost them, you know, within that process. So that was actually a huge thing that really affected us as a small online business, was that tap to shop function going. I don't know why it went. It's never come back. And I know it affected loads of small businesses. But then we were plowing a lot of money into marketing, which was like a lot of SEO. And we had a PR company, and they were doing like online paid ads for me. It's not something I was experienced in, so I didn't know how to read like the back end of my Google Analytics and create ads and all of that. So they were doing that for me. They cost an absolute fortune. So you're paying them a monthly fee, then you're also paying for the ad spend on top of that. And then a lot of it is trial and error, you know, like this ad worked, this ad didn't work. How many ads did that,
Yeah.
or how many sales did that ad bring in? You know, it's generating that one ad you might spend $1,000 on, and then you're paying the monthly fee to the agency, and then you might get back $3,000 in sales. But like that's only like evening out what your ad spend was and what the agency, you know, so you're,
Yeah.
and then you're a big
And
fool because you're paying people to pack the orders. So no, but you're actually not making any money.
when you were running ads at that time, what kind of money were you spending on ads a month and the agency, that whole marketing fee?
Yeah, so it's different at different stages, but roughly the minimum
Mm.
spend on an ad we were doing was between €500 and €1,000 a month. And then the agency were roughly about, the agency fee was about 1,200 a month then, you know?
Yeah.
So even just to cover the ad spend and the agency, you were have to pumping out the orders. So for that to break even and me to pay staff to pump out the orders, you know, you need an influx. You need a lot more orders than breaking even there. And it's
Yeah.
very hard when you're a small business because you don't have the wiggle room to say, oh, throw a couple more hundred at that ad. Or, you know, you're like, this has to work. This has to work, you know, there's no playing around with it. So there was a lot of money, I wouldn't say wasted. I mean, what went out came back in. Like we got our money's worth out of the ads, but we didn't get what we expected. We
Yeah.
didn't get like an unbelievable amount of sales through the ads. And then, you know, people want discounting. There's constant discounting going on. Our margin didn't allow for constant discounting. Like we physically could not afford it. Then when things kind of started slowing down and I could see there was a cost of living crisis happening in Ireland, people were pulling back their spend, especially on my type of product where it was more of a basic luxury product for a baby. There was people undercutting me in the market. The likes of H&M and Pennies and everything started coming out then with Zip Baby Grows, which they'd never had in their range before.
Yeah.
I really started to feel it then, you know, and that's when we looked at, okay, we've got a unit in a retail park and we're going to partition off the wall. We're going to make it into half a shop, half a warehouse, and let's see if we can, because I had a lot of people doing click and collect as well. So we were like, okay, let's make it into a shop and see if we can work this way, because if I'm paying somebody to do orders and they're coming in and if it's a bit quiet, at least then if they're in the shop they can sell while they're there, you know, or while I'm there. Like, I mean, I'm in the shop every day. And so we had to kind of put in a little bit extra money to put up a wall, buy fittings and fixtures and mannequins and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we were always trying to, what's the next thing? And, you know, a lot of the feedback within the retail space, I was in a couple of different associations as well. Like I was in the Council of Irish Fashion Designers, and you know, it was all like, okay, you need to make more of a shopping experience. You know, people don't really want to shop online anymore. They're going back into the stores. And, you know, that's where it really gave me the drive to go back to physical bricks and mortar store. And that's where I came from originally. I mean, I managed
Yeah.
boutiques a billion years ago, you know. I personally love shopping in a shop. So trying to do that. But then again, to run the shop, it means that I or somebody else has to be there because you can't tell people you're only open on random days or times. So again, just looking at that, what is that bringing in versus, you know, how can we be smarter? And it just didn't really work. I mean, it all worked to a point, and then you get to a
Yeah.
point where you're like, I'm literally, me personally, I'm literally working for less than minimum wage. Is this
Why you started the business in the first place. And obviously, you know, we have, I think a lot of people will say when they start a business, they want to spend more time with their family, but you go from 9 to 5 to like 24 hours instead. I think when you first, you know, when you, not 24 hours, but you know what I mean? And so you had the bank loan as well. So what happened with the conversations with the bank? Because as we were talking before we recorded, that really put a spanner in the works for you.
Yeah. So we had taken out, like, that was one bank loan, and then we had topped it up then to fixture the shop and things like that. So over the course of like the 5, 6 years we were in business, we had kind of like, at different stages added money in. So whether we topped up the bank loan or we personally injected money into the business to try different things and to keep it going and to manage our stock and staff and all of that stuff. And I did get some grants from the local enterprise office, which was fantastic, and it was amazing that they believed in us as well because they were supporting us, you know. But it's not enough for a small business. Like the grants just aren't enough there, and you have to also match the funding. So with certain grants with
Yeah.
them, if they're gonna give you a grant for 30 grand, you need to have 30 grand as well. So there's you have 60 grand to play around with, but we have to personally get that 30 grand from somewhere, you know. So look, over the couple of years, we racked up a bit of debt, and then what happened was we came up to the end of the year. We were like, look, we've got 6 months to let's see how we trade into our winter season because that's our key selling period. Our business was kind of 60% winter season, 40% summer. And it went well, but not well enough. And I carried over quite a bit of stock. And we decided then, okay, we're going to have to cut costs. Where can we cut? So it was like, okay, we can get rid of the unit and bring everything back to the house. Get rid of the staff, and I'm going to have to work 24/7 on this. But I was committed to it. I mean, I was like, I want this to succeed. So let's just try everything. I am not closing until I try everything that I
Yeah.
can. And that I know deep down inside that I've done whatever I possibly can to make this work. So we decided to do that. 1 minute, I was kind of, okay, am I just going to close? Then I was like, no, I'm going to bring it back to the house. Then I was like, no, I'm going to close. Then I was like, oh, I'm going to bring it back to the house. So it was such a hard decision to make. So I decided, no, I'm not hanging up the boots. I'm going to bring it back to the house. So we did that, and our landlord was amazing. He was so kind. He, didn't keep me in this big contract or anything like that. He was like, understand where you're at. Wish you the best of luck. No problem. So went back to the house, brought the embroidery machine back to the house. That was another investment. That was about 10 grand for the embroidery machine and things like that. So brought that back to the house. So poor Isabel had no bedroom. I was like, okay, sorry, but this is my mum's shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, had the embroidery machine in the bedroom, all my pick and pack. I had to get rid of some of like my stacking units, and I sold rails and stuff off to other businesses that were doing things and mannequins and whatever. And I was like, right, coming back to the house. And, it was the right thing to do because obviously straight away, I mean, you're cutting costs massively. So as I did that, we went then and spoke to the bank and said, listen, we're having cash flow issues here, but we really still believe in the brand and in the business. You can see from our sales. I mean, like we were doing over 100 grand a year, you can see from our sales, see from everything, we're actually doing quite well, but we actually need a break on these loans to free up the cash flow. Or can you extend, like break them and then just extend the term, So we come up with a couple of different offers for the bank. And they were like, initially they were like, listen, you're not the only business that's going through this. We're talking to businesses all day, every day, from restaurants to clothing shops to everything. So we'll help and support you. So we left there going, brilliant, okay. And I was like, phew. Like I was so stressed out, and I was like, grand, everything's got to be fine. We'll just plod along at home until we can just get all of this sorted. So plodding along.
And just, I would say as well, because you are the founder of the brand and on your social media, you're very visible. That whole time must have been very stressful and meant that you pulled back from selling
Yeah.
from Instagram and from showing up because of the uncertainty in your own mind.
Yeah, I didn't know what to tell people, to be honest with you, because one
Yeah.
minute I was like, oh my God, am I closing? Then the next minute was like, no, I'm not. I'm going to try and do everything I can to stay open. And like, I was very honest on Instagram. Like I always said to everyone, like, look, sales are tough. This is hard, and like support your small businesses and all of that kind of stuff, and like I had the most amazing customers. Like I still have people messaging me every day saying, are you really like not coming back? I had a lady who has a son who has autism and will only sleep in our sleep bags. And she was like, I don't know what to do. Like one is literally like, he can't wear it anymore. Like he'll only wear this sleep bag. And I put it out on my Instagram saying, if anyone is done with their Lil and Izzy sleep bag in a bigger size, this lady is looking for it. And, we'll just send it to me, I'll send it to her, or I'll connect you. And I connected her with a couple of people who sent her the sleep bags, and she was like, oh my God, now I have a couple of years worth of sleep bags left, and thank God, like, you know. Like, you're getting messages like that from people,
Mm.
and it's you are actually helping someone so much. You never think a baby girl or a sleep bag is going to help someone that much, you know, and it does. So I still get those messages, like, honestly, weekly, and I'm like, guys, no, I'm out of reach.
I'm done. And and then what happened with the what then?
Yeah. So literally every single week that went by, we were hemorrhaging more money, you know? And I was like, I've got bills coming out. When is this going to be sorted with the bank? Like, we need like to stop on these loan, breaking this loan and blah, blah, blah. So like every week, I can show you the emails. There must be, I'd say 50 emails back and forward of, please, can you help us? We have, you know, been in touch, blah, blah, blah. I had an account manager there. I was wrecking his head every single week. Can we have an answer? This is still in a process. Can we please have an answer? You know, these processes take time. Can I please have an answer? To this day, yesterday, I got it because I logged a complaint with the bank when we finally did get an answer 4 months later. So there was a cutoff point where we spoke to our accountant, and he was like, if you don't have an answer by this point, you're going to have to go into liquidation, because, or else you're going to have to inject money into it, because, like, you know, money is just not going to magically appear from somewhere. So I had emailed them saying, I need an answer by this point, or we're going to, like, we have to go into liquidation. No response, no response. You know, I'd be getting random messages back and forth, you know, automated messages, and it was just so frustrating. So 4 months later, we decided, okay, we're at that cutoff point now. We've got nowhere with the bank. We're actually, you know, more in debt because we're not going to be able to pay back this loan, and that's all going to bounce. So we were like, right, we're going to have to enter liquidation. And to be honest, it just took the decision out of my hands, because I wasn't like, will I, won't I? It was just like, there's no option. You've done everything you possibly can, and now this is the situation, you know. So sent an email to the bank, and we couldn't find out like how to actually even liquidate a business. Like, you know, we're a small business. We're not a big corporation that has financial advisors here, there, and everywhere, and CEOs that are, you know, your finance department and your technology department, you know. Like, I am the technology department, the product department,
Everything.
everything. So, like, you know, you're wearing so many hats, and there's only so much Google will tell you on how to liquidate a business. And we spoke to a liquidator who said, this is the process. You have to put these ads in the newspaper, in your local newspaper, 3 ads in your local newspaper. You have to call this meeting. You have to do X, Y, Z. And we were like, okay, this is so bizarre, but fine. So I was just like, you just tell me what the process is, and I will just do it. So I had to do all of that. I had to contact the bank and say, well,
So how did you actually find out how to liquidate the business?
so I got onto my accountant and I said, I don't know what I'm meant to do here. Like, tell me. And he was like, okay, you can contact this person for advice on liquidation. And I was like, okay, fine. So I rang him, and he sat down with me and said, so they're a liquidation agency, but they're like, the bank will appoint their own liquidator. But this is what you're responsible for as a director of the company. So basically, I had to put the notices in the newspaper. I had to contact the bank and any creditors that we owed, a supplier and all that, owed money to, and told them that the business was going into liquidation. We had to call a formal meeting, and it all has to be done in like certain stages within a time frame. Like, the newspaper ad has to go in exactly like 7 days before the meeting's held, and all this random stuff. Like, it's so
Yeah.
archaic. And it has to go in your local newspaper where the business is actually, you know, functioning. So I had to put in a couple of local newspapers. You have to have proof of that. So you have to get the physical newspaper with the ad and have all of that for the bank and all that. So it was just like, oh my God, this is like head melting stuff. And then once all of that goes off and you have then your meeting with your creditors or people that you owe, they can come to the meeting, or like loads of them didn't even show up to the meeting. Like, we held the meeting on Zoom, and like I was sitting there being like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I'm
Yeah.
so stressed out. They're gonna all go mental. And like, 2 people showed up to the meeting, you know. And I was just like, this is the situation. You present your accounts, the accountant's there, and he goes, okay, this is the situation, blah, blah, blah. And the business now into liquidation. And they're like, okay, grand, we're all in the process now. And that was it. And I was like, oh my God, I was so stressed out over this meeting, but like, there's nothing I can do. This is a process. So once you enter liquidation, you are like no longer part of the business. Like it's like the business dies and everything to do with the business dies with it. So then I obviously had some stock left over and the embroidery machine and fixtures and fittings. So basically a van comes, takes everything, goes off, and then they do whatever they need to do with all of that stuff. And
Yeah, to
I
try and
am,
get some recoup some money on the
yeah,
assets.
they like sell it off or whatever. And the bank doesn't really talk to me. They talk to the liquidator and they go back and forward. So since we entered liquidation like last year, it was all meant to be tied up like by Christmas. I still have no idea like what's actually happening. It's still
Yeah.
in the process, and I presume at some point I will be contacted. We actually do have a personal guarantee with the bank on one of the bank loans, so I'm personally liable for that and for that money to be paid back. But until the liquidation process is like all done, the bank won't even like talk to me about that. Like, so
Hmm.
I can't even start paying that off or anything yet because
Yeah.
until that process is done, they will not entertain me, speak to me, nothing. So during all of that time, like now I'm just like, look, it is what it is. This is just part of business. I've gone full circle. I've literally started it here at my kitchen table and I ended it here at my kitchen table. It's weird. Like it's so strange. Yeah, it's you learn as you go. Like it's not something that someone can ever sit you in a classroom for or any mentor
Yeah.
meeting can help you with, you know. It's a weird process and like at the start I was so stressed out. Like I was sick with stress. And my husband's very calm person, thank God, and he was just like, Katie, you are not the first person that's ever had to close a business and you won't be the last. We've done everything we possibly
Yeah.
can to keep this going. Like, you know, you just need to chill now. And like, this is the process. We're in a process. And then when the banks come back to us, we'll deal with it. Like, just calm down. And I was like, you're right. It's actually out of my control now. So it is what it is, you know?
And when you had those kind of first warning signs, I suppose, and those doubts, is there anything that you think you would have done differently at that point?
Yeah, like I do think when you're a founder of a small business and you put your heart and soul into something, it's very difficult to let go. And there was probably warning signs that I wasn't willing to see because I kept thinking like I can make this work. You know, this is a bump. Because everyone talks about the bumps in the roads, and then I'd have
Mm.
mentors with the Leo, and they'd be like, this is business. You'll have peaks and troughs, and blah blah blah, and you'll get through it. And like, was it a warning sign or did this just happen? I don't really know. Like, I don't think we could have done anything differently. I mean, for a product business these days, personally, unless your margin is through the roof, you're not going to be able to succeed because you need so much spend behind your marketing and you need to constantly be pumping that into like Instagram and content and like influencers and all of that. Like marketing has just changed so much, and my background's not in marketing, my background is in product design. Like I learned all this marketing stuff going along. So yeah, like I would never say to somebody don't start a product business, and I would never say to somebody you know don't start a business. Because of my experience, I'm starting up another business, now. So it hasn't left a sour taste in my mouth that way, but you do have to be ready to know when to give up. And I don't think maybe I didn't know when to give up. I think I'm the type of person that needed nearly the liquidation to happen, because I don't think I would have ever given up. I think I would have went back to the bank and maybe just said to her, oh look, let's put another 20 grand in, and
Yeah.
really like work my arse off. It doesn't matter how many times like I've worked my bum off the last 6 years. Like I can't say that I didn't, and it just didn't work. There was so many things that came against us: the pricing, the cost of living, the competitors. Like we were just middle of the road price range, not cheap, not expensive enough to have that margin behind us for that buffer to allow that to happen.
What kind of margin were your average kind of margin that you had on the product?
The average margin was like two point, like, yeah, 2.5. Um,
So market.
yeah,
Yeah.
2.5 to 3. And when we were wholesaling, like, I was making no money wholesaling
I was about
whatsoever.
to
That
say
was,
if your
yeah,
D2C markup was and margin was probably like between the 50 and 60%, you really must it's
yeah,
probably not
it was
making
lean.
anything
Yeah. So
on
when
the
we were on,
wholesale side of
yeah, so on the wholesale side of things, we actually cut wholesale out in the last year because we weren't making any money. And the whole point of the wholesale and the plan behind that was that it would drive the units up for the cost price to come down overall. And then when we
yeah.
averaged it out, we were making a much higher margin in general. But the wholesale was actually taking over so much time in terms of packaging and boxing and labeling everything and having staff to, like, our delivery would come in on like 5, 10 pallets, and then I'd have to literally take all everything out of all the boxes, 20 for you, 10 for you, 5 for you. And it was like trying to manage all of that and having staff to help get all of that out. So wholesale was more of a marketing exercise. It gave us a nice stability with where the brand sat in terms of like our customer profile and things like that. I mean, it did really, really well in Avoca, and that was my market. That was the customer base. And yeah, it just, unfortunately, the margin just wasn't high enough to really get much back from wholesale. It was just more that it was a marketing and a branding exercise more so than it being of any
Profit.
monetary value. And like, we did hope that being in Avoca would then help us into the UK to get to like Selfridges and other boutiques. Once you're in one that is a high end, it's easier to get into others. But then when Brexit and everything happened, the shipping to the UK was extortionate, and that just set us back massively then as well.
What were the moments that were most challenging for you personally?
Oh God. Just the point where you come to the realization that, like, it's over, like,
Hmm.
it is no more. Um, yeah, like, I'm bringing it back to the house. Oh, I hated that. That was where I was like, no, this is not what I built this for. Like, it
Yeah.
just felt like such a step back. And I think that's when I really realized, can I get it out of this hole? Because I started here, I can build it up. But yeah, I think I lost a lot of the motivation when we brought it back to the house. I felt really depleted and really just like, oh, I just don't want to do this anymore.
And how has the whole experience, both from starting it, I suppose, and then closing it, how has it shaped your own perspective on things? What have you learned about yourself personally going through the process?
Oh God. Um, that I know more than I think I know, and that I can do hard things. I can definitely do hard
Yeah.
things, and I can make really hard decisions. And I channeled a lot of my stress into, I've always been into the gym and fitness and stuff like that, but I channeled a lot of that stress into just going to the gym every day, like getting those slam balls, lifting those weights, and like getting all of that stress out of my body so my shoulders weren't up here. Yeah, and that really helped me just like be a bit more level with it all. But I mean, I had so many lovely mentors and people contact me actually when I was closing. Like, I went to a lot of women in business events and I loved going to them, especially the Image Business Club. Like, I loved being part of that because it was really inspiring evenings, and it was always women telling their story, but it was always a lovely story. No one really talked about the hard graft and like actual hard times. And I even personally asked questions to certain people about like hard times, and they gave me back willy nilly answers. And I always came out being like, Jesus, am I the only one that's actually really struggling here in business? Until I met Sharon Keegan from Peachy Lean, and she
Yeah.
had an amazing story at one of the Image Business Club events. She was so honest. She was talking about, trying to get investment and then it falling through and having to let staff go. And actually, at one point, we did have an investor interested in investing in the business and it just didn't work. Um, so, we were looking at that part as well for cash flow and dealing with Enterprise Ireland and all of that. So, like, I did exhaust every avenue. But Sharon, getting back to Sharon, she was just so honest and she was just like, sometimes you can do absolutely everything and things just don't work out. Like, you've got Temu, you've Shein, you've all these people that you're up against now, and it's just so bloody hard. And then when I was closing, I put up a post on Instagram and I tagged her in it, just saying, she was real inspiration. And she actually contacted me personally and we had a catch up on the phone. And she just gave me like a good talking to. And she was like, you have a PhD in business now, Katie.
Yeah, she's absolutely great. I mean, she's been a guest on the podcast talking about Peachy Lean and Dragon's Den, and she's going to be on again soon talking about the closure of it and what she's doing next. And I think it's really, like you said, I think it's really important to highlight businesses struggle. Some businesses, they succeed to a point and then they might, then there comes something that's that bump in the road that they just can't get over. But also that the motivation from the business owner needs to, and I remember seeing a post that you said about your own priorities had changed because you had started the business when the kids were young and a different kind of life stage for you as well. And sometimes you can just outgrow something,
100%. Yeah. And that's definitely true. Like, when I started, Izzy was 6 months old and I was very much in that baby stage, and all the new things and all of that kind of stuff. And then, like, she's 6 now. And I'm so disconnected to the new mums now, do you know? Like, actually, one of my friends has just had her second baby. And I was like, oh my God, would she even buy them now? Do you know? Like, I'm so, like, disconnected. Like, if she
I've
asked me
done
to
my nappy changing. I've done my sleepless nights.
yeah, like if she literally asked me to mind him for an afternoon, I'd be like, hey, when do I feed him? What do I do? Like, I just
Yeah.
can't even remember what it's like. So to keep being in that space when your life has evolved is difficult as well. And that definitely wasn't any part of the reason of closing it all because I
Yeah.
did evolve with kids. I brought in, the matching mummy jammies and
Yeah.
jumpers, and like I had loads of great plans to do loads more clothing and stuff because that's my passion. But it just, unfortunately, the cash wasn't there to keep product developing all the time because it's expensive to constantly innovate and get samples made and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, you can just outgrow a brand or outgrow where your space is. But I feel like a lot of my following on Instagram were mums that followed me from the beginning, from when Izzy was 6 months old and when I launched, and their
Yeah.
kids are all 6 now, or 7 or whatever they are.
Yeah.
So you're constantly having to get that new customer all the time too in the baby space.
Yeah. And for business owners that are might be struggling with similar issues or similar thoughts about I stick or twist, whatever, do I fold it or do I keep on going? What would be your words of advice for them?
I would say if you still have the passion and drive for it and you've got a bit of cash and it just needs a bit of cash and you still have that passion and drive, keep it up. But if it's going to, number one, bankrupt you, no, don't go any further. Or if it's something that you're just not, if you know deep down inside that it's not right, cut the cord and cut it earlier on, because I feel like I probably should have cut the cord in December last year instead of bringing it back to the shop, back to the house, and then getting onto the bank. And I just didn't have it in me to cut the cord then. I needed to make sure that I had exhausted every avenue. But, would we probably be in a better personal financial position had I done that? Yes. But it was never really like, as I said, I was earning less than minimum wage. I was paying my staff more than me, when you look at the amount of hours and the amount of time and energy I was putting into it. So it wasn't about the money, but it was also never a hobby. And that's the different thing you have to look at when you're,
Yeah.
a small business. Lots of moms are, working for themselves. And whether you could be baking cakes or you could be making stuff or whatever you're doing, you have to make that decision. Is it a hobby or is it a business? I never wanted this to be my hobby. I wanted to get a salary out of it. I wanted it to be a business, and I wanted it to be a global brand. That was always my vision. So if I was bringing it back to the house, I felt like this is just a part-time willy-nilly hobby job. Like that's not what I
Yeah.
signed up for. And that's when I was like, this isn't working.
You've started a new business venture, which we'll talk about in a minute. But how has your approach to business changed based on your experience?
I've put up a lot of boundaries. I actually did myself out a calendar last night and I blocked off time for me that I still need in my day, that I cannot go back in to running another business where I run myself into the ground and I don't actually have time to think. So I've literally blocked off an hour for myself every single day in that calendar where I go to the gym myself, or I work out, or I meet my friend, or I do something that is not business related. Because when you work for yourself, you're so consumed by it 24/7. And especially when it's an online thing, you just like, there's no days off, you know?
Yeah.
So I need to really be mindful of that because I am the type of person that goes in 110% with everything I do. And it's to the detriment of my own self. To the detriment of my success, but also like, yeah, it can just, you can end up hating it. And I don't want to do that. I want to love what I do, you know? And what am I doing differently now? I am not taking on any overheads. I, I
People that don't know, what is the new business?
Yeah. So the new business is I qualified as a personal trainer and nutrition coach. I did all of I what I tend to do when I'm stressed is throw myself into fitness, run marathons and sign up to mad stuff. So that's what I did last year. I signed up to the Dublin Race Series and I did 2 High Rocks events and I did like fitness competitions and I was in full midlife crisis mode. But I was on such a journey of self discovery that I kind of forgot who I was because I got so caught
Mm.
up in the Lil and Izzy business that I actually forgot who I am as a person. So through doing all of my fitness stuff, back in my previous days before I was in retail, I was actually a dance teacher and I had my own dance school and I'm fully trained in like ballet and jazz and tap and musical theatre and everything. So I actually had my own dance school when I was like 19. That was my first ever business. Um, yeah, so and when I finished that, I finished dancing through injury, and then I went back to college and I studied fashion, and then I got into the fashion world and was in it for like over 20 years. My cousin only said to me the other day, because I'm actually teaching some classes for her in her Pilates studio, so I'm teaching the functional fitness classes there, and she was like, Katie, 20 years ago, when you decided you were going back to do fashion, I said to you, why aren't you doing fitness? And I was like, no, no, I'm injured now. I'm not going to have a long career in fitness. I need to do something else. And here I am now, 20 years later, teaching in her studio that she's had going for 20 years. And I'm doing personal training locally in Bray. I'm doing one-to-one personal training and I'm doing online coaching. So yeah, it's all just kind of kicked off this week, really, to be honest with you. I've been working on things in the background for the last kind of couple of months, just as nearly as a hobby, and now it's just kind of gone into more of a business. But keeping everything lean and manageable and not taking on too much because I am a yes person a lot of the time. I don't like letting people down, but I also need to work around my kids, and that has always been why I started my own business in the first place, was to be able to have my work life balance with my family and to be there for the girls, dropping them to school and picking them up from school and bringing them to their dancing and stuff. So that's kind of my vision now going forward, is to just make things work for me. And yeah, so far so good. Week one, so it's all go good in week one.
So if anyone is listening who's local to Bray or wants some online coaching and nutrition training from Katie, the links to her new businesses will be in the show notes. And Katie, thank you so much for chatting and being so open and honest and sharing what you would have wanted to hear, I suppose, when you were going through this process. But thanks so much for coming on, and I'll be back again next week with another great guest.
Thanks a million.